Hello, welcome back. And today we're going to talk about what do you do when you need to make a big decision. So this is coming from a few places. First of all, I was recently working with a client, and on our call, he was trying to make a really big decision. So we were going through the process for that. And also for myself, I will say sometimes I can get hung up in indecision. If you know me, you might be chuckling. Something I continue to work on, especially as the CEO of a business. It's important to be able to consider all the factors, but ultimately, sometimes we need to make quick decisions and take quick action. So I'm always working on myself and my own process and how can I become a really conscious, I would say, decision maker, but also efficient. And so I wanted to chat with you a little bit about what are some of the things and conversations I had with my client, some of the resources I shared with him, as well as for myself. So first of all, I'm just curious, and I would love for you to send me a message, share this. When you come to making big decisions, let's just say, not just like, what do I want to have for breakfast? Although some people can struggle with that as well, that like paralysis by analysis. But when it comes to like bigger decisions, like maybe a big personal decision or a professional decision, are you a option A, completely like gut, you go with your gut and whatever your gut says, that's what you do, and maybe just kind of fly by the seat of your pants? Or are you an option B, pro con list, consider all the factors? Or are you a little bit of a blend? So send me a message. I'm super curious. I would say I'm a bit of a blend personally. I am a fact finder. If you've ever taken the Colby assessment, I'm a fact finder. So I like to gather all the information and before I make a decision. But ultimately, and sometimes I like to get people's opinion, although I've tried to do that less and like really listen to myself. That was definitely my MO before. Is like, what does everyone else think I should do? Whereas now I like to gather the information. I might get other perspectives, but I always ultimately come back to my gut decision. And I've talked about this before, that trusting myself and what I believe is the right step has gotten to me to where I am. And I believe that has been a core factor in decisions I've made, success I've felt, and things like that, is ultimately trusting myself. So I'm kind of a combination of like, find the information, get the facts, I need the facts, but ultimately trying to always quiet that outside noise and come back to myself and trust myself in that decision. So I would say a blend. Whereas I think sometimes what I see with clients is they can really struggle with that trusting themselves piece, and they gather all the facts, but what happens is their own judgment and their own ultimate decision can get clouded because we ask everybody else for their opinion and what everybody else should do, what everyone else thinks we should do, and then we cloud our own judgment. And so when I'm working with one-on-one clients, particularly, and they're trying to make a big decision, I really try and lean into and meet them where they're at. And I usually can pick up on this based on other conversations. Like if they're someone who leads more with their heart and with their gut, is that how they make decisions? Are they someone who leads more with kind of their mind, kind of that analytical thing? We'll use different tools and approaches based on that and try and blend the two. So I recently had a client who he was trying to make a really big decision on if he wanted to go for a next level position. And we've been working together for a while now, and this opportunity came up. He's conflicted because he really loves his role, which is actually really great. A lot of the times we hear people are not happy in their role, but he really loves his role and he feels, energized by it. He feels really successful in it. He feels really smart, like he's really good at his role. And also there's an opportunity for kind of a next step. And ultimately, in his mind, in his kind of personal development growth plan is, 2 steps from now, like he wants to get to this certain level. And this next position would be a great stepping stone. And it would help him to fill some gaps in skills that he currently has, that he's sort of self-identified. So he's trying to make this decision. So some of the things and the tools that we've been using that I want to share with you if you are trying to make a big decision is, first of all, to really dig in. And I would say whether you can do this by yourself, or if you have a coach, if you're looking for coach support, hello, I'm here. Send me a message. I would love to chat with you about supporting you in these types of things. Also, if you can find somebody who could be that the listening ear. Because here's the thing, and this is really where the magic is if you've never actually worked with a coach before, is the coach is a non-biased, non-judgmental person, meaning it's not a friend or a family member who's going to have bias, who's going to kind of insert their own opinions on what they think that you should do. As a coach, our job is not to tell you what to do, it's to help pull out what you should do. So if you can find someone in your life or in your work that can help be that person for you, and really ask you those questions. So some tools and some things to think about is, first of all, what's coming up for you when you think about making this decision? Whether it's emotions or feelings, like what's really coming up for you? What's keeping you stuck in being able to make the decision? Another way to say that is, what do you need to address or resolve in order to make this decision? Other things for you to think about is, what is one of the resources that I use with my clients? It's called the pain gain model. And it's a really interesting way to look at your current situation and the future situation if you made that decision. And what's the pain or the cost to you for staying in this current situation? What's the gain of you staying in this current situation? And then kind of adding in that other layer of like, what would be the cost that you would have to pay essentially to make this change, and what would you gain by making that change? And sometimes when we look at kind of this like quadrant of all of those things, and then we just ask ourselves, like, what do I see here? What do I want to do with this? So that's another tool and a resource that I'll use with my clients, is to really come at it from that perspective. And that kind of feeds into a little bit more of the like analytical, like thinking through all of the components. And then if you're kind of someone that comes in from that gut feeling, it's like, yeah, what would it feel like if you were to make that decision? What does it feel like? What would it feel like in your body? What would it feel like in your emotions? Some other things to think about is like, what's the worst that could happen? The worst case scenario, if I were to make this change or make this decision, what's the best thing that could happen? Right? And so all of those kind of questions that you can ask yourself, and using that sort of pain gain tool. And so we were doing this with my client. He was, getting all these things coming up, and he still wasn't really sure. He still didn't have that decision. So the next step that we took that I would recommend for you is thinking about your vision. And this can be really helpful I use this a lot of the times with clients. I have different resources that I kind of pull from, is thinking about your vision. And for him, he had mentioned a couple of times where he wanted to go in his career. So we had him do a 5-year vision plan. Where do you want to be 5 years from now? What do you want your work to look like? What do you want your life to look like? Things like, how much do you want to be making, or where do you want to be living, or how do you want to spend your time? Like all of these components you put into that, and you kind of create this vision, right? That can help give you more clarity. And then the next thing that he did was he identified his values. So if you've never done values work, it can be really, really helpful. I have a tool that I use with my clients, a values assessment that has all the values, but then also how do you put them into action, which can create really interesting insights. If you want access to that, send me a message and we can chat about that. But this values assessment, so he identified his top values. And, when he was sharing, he's like, I'm so glad that we did this. Like, this is such important work and so many great things for me to be thinking about. And where he struggled a bit was picking his top 5, because we sometimes can struggle trying to narrow it down because we value all these things, right? But it's really helping us to figure out what are the things we value the most in this season of life, knowing that might change, right? What do I value the most in this season of life? So really getting clear on what those values are and what do those mean to you, because they mean something. Like, what do they look like in action? They mean different things to different people. And so he identified these values. And then what we can do is we can go, how am I currently living into and honoring my values with the way that the situation is? And if I were to make this decision, does that help me to honor, or would that dishonor certain values? Would this help me to live more into my values? Do I see conflict? Right? Because for him, he identified a couple of values that was like, if I'm out of alignment with these values, like everything feels off. Like these are, especially his top couple was like, I need to honor these. And so we had a conversation around, how do you feel like your lifestyle right now and your position right now is doing for that? And what do you think could change with this? And really creating this, really interesting conversation around it. And even sometimes what we see happen then is like, well, I think if I make this decision, I would honor these values, but I feel like I would feel strained in these values, and kind of talking about that. And so all of those pieces of what's that, the pain and the gain of current situation of making the decision, thinking about from a gut perspective, like what comes up for you, what are you afraid might happen, what's best case, worst case scenario, and then also creating that vision for yourself, depending upon how far out you want to go, 1, 5, 10 years from now. What does that vision look like? And would this decision help you to move forward towards that vision, or would it detract from it? And then adding in that values work, like what do you value? And how are you honoring those values? And how does this decision help you to honor, or will it, again, detract from or kind of pull away from those values? So let's just say I've had clients before, it's like family was their number one value. And when they weren't honoring that value, everything felt off. And so there are certain decisions that they chose not to go for, certain things they chose not to do, because at this stage of their life, at this point in time, that was a value that they honored. So that's example, if someone values family over maybe career growth, and they're choosing at this point in time to not go for a position where they're going to have to travel a whole bunch of times because their first value is family, and it would pull away from that. So when you can come back to your values, and knowing that the thing is, some of our values stay with us forever and some change, right? At different stages of life, it's coming back and really knowing what those are for you. That can really help to guide you in making those decisions, getting the information you need, and then asking yourself, what do I want to do with this? What decision do I want to make? And knowing that you are going to do the best you can with what you've got, with where you're at right now, so that we can release any like, well, what ifs in terms of like regret, or what if I should have, right? You are going to trust yourself with all the information you have, with everything you have inside of you, with knowing your values and where you want to go, that the decision you're going to make is the right one for you at the right time with the information you have. So hopefully these tools are helpful when you need to make a big decision. And remember to trust yourself. It starts with you. We need to quiet the noise of what everybody else thinks we should do and come back to what's right for us.